Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of How to Get My Job. We sit down with amazing people within the design and product industry and ask them how their careers started, evolved, and what advice they have for those coming after them. Joining us today is Eric Burman, a director of digital product design at Nike.
Hey Danielle, how are you? I'm doing well. Living here in the Netherlands and enjoying some sun for the day.
You've had a really interesting career. You started off at Ogilvy as an
Yep.
intern. I hope I get
Yeah.
that right. And then you worked at Ticketmaster for a while, and now you're at Nike. And
Yeah.
yeah, what would be great to kind of get to know and speak to you about today's that journey, how you made those moves, and any kind of tips and advice you can share with us. So
Sounds great.
let's just jump into it with the first question, which is how did you get your first job in product design?
So as you mentioned, I started my career in marketing and advertising. I was at Ogilvy for a bit, and initially, it was not on my radar at all. I wouldn't say I fell into it, but it just wasn't on my radar. I always wanted to be in marketing and advertising. Shortly after my career began, the show Mad Men, if you recall that show, came
I
out all
love
about
that
those.
show.
Yeah. And I would say marketing and advertising kind of had this renaissance where it was back into this
Mhm.
kind of heyday, lots of excitement around it. It was in a great place, right place at the right time when that show came out. But it was true to form, lots of late nights, lots of back of the napkin concepting, lots of creativity, working in a myriad of different agencies. And yeah, I was doing that for quite a while. I was about 5 years into my career. I was an art director. And I think I just got to a place where I was wondering what's next in my career. I had this little bit of a sense that like the well was drying up a little bit in terms of creativity. I was on a little bit of an autopilot and I was getting a little burnt out. And while I loved it and I loved the creativity of it, I was ready for something new. And during that time, we had a client that needed a full website redesign based on some new branding that my team had created. And I had no experience in web or digital really. The most I was doing at that point was like creating marketing banners for websites. And at the time, this was like 2010. D2C, like direct to consumer experiences for brands was not happening. You never really saw that. It was very infancy in any kind of product design experiences or UX experiences, and I was still unsure of what that even was, but I was intrigued, and so I got an opportunity to kind of do some research, understand what it meant to redesign a website, and I worked on it and built out or designed a new website for this brand. And I realized at that moment, like that was something that really drove me and sparked interest I hadn't had in probably a year or so. And so I decided I needed to do something else. And I knew I knew at the time it was going to be a real uphill kind of climb to get into that world. I'd never worked in it. I had one portfolio example, which was this one website. I didn't even know if it was good or not. I just put my name out there as to companies and organizations that were more in-house that were doing design, and luckily Ticketmaster took a chance on me. But I also knew at the time that to get into that world, I needed to think about taking a bit of a back step into where I currently was. I was an art director. I was managing and leading a team, a small team at the time at the agency I was in, but I knew I probably wasn't going to be doing that. And so I ended up taking like an associate level, just out of college type role as a designer at Ticketmaster, and did a lot of work in the marketing space there for a little bit. Eventually, my curiosity around kind of holistic experiences and understanding that at the end of the day, people aren't coming here to see a splash page or an advertisement on these platforms I was working on. They were there to get something accomplished. For Ticketmaster, I was finding tickets to an event that they were interested in. And, I was really interested into that holistic approach of solving problems. And so I just, started, getting more and more responsibility at the organization, and kind of faked it till I made it, I would say. Learning from my peers. Never did any continuing education on it other than conferences and, some reading blogs about designers and what this thing UX was at the time, and really kind of understanding the space. And from there, it just kind of catapulted me throughout the rest of my career. I kind of, having that baseline experience in design really pushed me up the ranks pretty quickly at Ticketmaster, and kind of brought me to where I am today.
Amazing. And I guess like what you said about like learning on the job, and I guess not being like afraid to take a step back and try something new. And I guess on the topic of like the type of characteristics you need to be able to maneuver into these kind of roles, that leads quite nicely on to our next question, which is, what are the most important qualities a product designer could have?
So I think having, no matter what phase you're in design, having a deep understanding of craft is really important. I think, it's something you can learn for sure. But I think at the end of the day, that's super important, whether you are just starting out in your career in design or you're at a management leadership level. To understand the baseline theories around design is super relevant, regardless of the type of design you're creating. And then, in terms of qualities, I think a general sense of creativity is always really important for design. I think it's designers in many ways most vital asset that they have. Good designers know how to use their imagination. It doesn't mean that they can draw, but what it means is that they can, learn to problem solve. They learn to think outside of the box. They use that imagination to kind of propel their work forward. Because I think, and at the end of the day, having that imagination, being creative, builds more ambitious minds, and ambitious minds end up kind of bringing forward innovation. And to pair with creativity, I think analytical skills is super important in product design. I think where I started in marketing and advertising, analytical skills wasn't as much of an importance as that creativity was. But when it comes to product design, it's super important. And there's a quote that I actually love to use when I think about like kind of the difference and what design is. And to me, it comes from this documentary that came out a few years ago called Design Disruptors. And the quote is, design is like a bridge that connects complexity to meaning. Complexity being like technologies, the systems, the businesses you're a part of, and the meaning being humans, and design being kind of that layer that connects the two. It takes all of that technology, takes all of those systems, takes where business wants to go, and it takes all of that and it brings meaning to it for the people and the end users that are going to be experiencing it. And the goal of a designer is to make sure you're creating a positive impact on people. And so how do you do that with all of this complexity that comes with it? And so I think analytical skills and creativity, kind of pairing those two are two of the biggest qualities that designers need.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I really love that quote. I'm literally like sitting here like my mind is blown a little bit.
I just rewatched it, and the documentary, and I didn't realize that it was like the first 40 seconds, I think, into the documentary that quote comes out, and it like has sat with me. I watched an entire like hour, and a half long documentary, and that first 40 seconds still resonates with me today. And that's one of the main things I've taken from that, because it just hit home right away of like, as designers, we're always trying to explain what we do. And like, that's been my easiest way to help explain what I do to people who aren't in this field.
And what was the documentary called, and where can people find it?
It's called Design Disruptors. Came out, I think Envision did the documentary back in like 2016, 2017. It's still live on their site, so it's free to watch. You can just like sign up, and you don't have to have an account or anything. You just I think give them your email and they'll send it to you to watch, I think.
Amazing. I'm definitely going to check that out. And I guess, yeah, like all of those qualities that you've listed are great. I especially, love what you said about having the creativity and the analytical, the two, needing the two. Yeah, that's obviously very important in product design. And I guess on the topic of like advice and things that have helped you along in your career, what's the best career advice you've ever been given?
To me, it's less about advice and more observation. Of all of the people that I've kind of crossed paths with throughout my career that have made the biggest impressions on me, and really what I've understood and took away from it was this ability to kind of stay curious, and this general understanding of like being curious of things, this curiosity. And this comes from just everybody, whether it's teachers that I've had that have been really inspired by, to leaders in the fields that I've been in, to the managers or my peers, the ones that I've had the biggest connection, that I've had the biggest connection with, have had this curiosity about them that I didn't really understand and really respect until much later in my career, especially like kind of coming back and thinking about, the last, 15 plus years, what has been some of the biggest takeaways from everyone that I worked with, those people that are constantly wondering, how does the world work? How can I make a positive impact on the world with what I do? And what is the current impact of the things that we're doing, and how can we make those things better? And it's just always asking questions, always being curious. And I think that curiosity actually makes you go in many ways further in your career. It does drive those qualities that I talked about, around creativity and being ambitious. And, I think that's what's been some of the best kind of takeaways that I've had from the people that I've worked with.
Great. No, I love that. And I think we're on the topic of like asking questions and not being afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of people are quite scared to ask questions sometimes because they don't want to seem like they have knowledge gaps or seem like they're inexperienced. But actually something my co-founder says a lot, Bernie, says that asking great questions is a sign of intelligence. And yeah, if you can
100%.
really master that, you can get so much out of like the people around you. I guess in the case of product design, when you're doing user testing, like if you can get like the feedback, like great feedback by asking great questions, then you're able to solve those problems and create a product that is like amazing. And what a brilliant note to leave this episode on. Thank you so much, Eric, for being a guest. It's been really lovely talking to you again.
Yeah, lovely talking to you.
Yeah, and until next time, take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.